crashed into me going muck fuck on the
What?
fucking road
Wait,
here.
Tilly was driving.
And then I nearly got fucking stabbed by a trucker that you sent my car into.
No, I swear to you, Tilly was driving. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, she even mentioned, she goes, oh, that's Maeve. And I'm like, do you want to check on her? And then she just kept, what is she doing?
Boat.
All right. Okay, so before
the other day about jet ski.
before I say anything, I wanted to hear, starting with Michael, and then Abilene, and then Archie, and then Maeve, and this is sort of in order of impact over the last 4 months to how this conversation went today, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah. I'm gonna start with. I want to start with how the conversation regarding the bank accounts went, because it kind of dovetails into my overarching point. When Hallow interjected and said like a federal cap, that wasn't what I was leading to. Where I was going was that the tools need to exist at the state level for them to take care of the things that they're concerned about, rather than having us effectively do their job for them by implementing these limits in our legislation to basically put us in shackles.
Mm-hmm.
My issue, don't get me wrong, I appreciate the progress. I think that was a really good conversation. It's one that should have happened months ago. But at the end of the day, I think what still needs to happen, and I'm sure is going to happen, is that the boundaries for all of us, our authority within our legislative area, Blaine County, SAMA, and the DOJ, that needs to be clearly defined. Because I think both Hart and Hallow, I don't think they're getting it. I think they're very much of the mind that their role extends beyond ensuring our legislation is constitutional. And I don't think they're understanding that they have all the tools they need to take care of the concerns that they have in their oversight and authority over the legal and judicial branches. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I agree.
And where it comes down to, if I could summarize it quite simply, one of the last things Hallow said to Dr. Nashville was, include a line in here that says it's illegal to drive under the influence of marijuana, even if you have a green card. Number one, there is no legislation that backs the driving under the influence charge. And number two, I would argue that it's the DOJ's responsibility to implement that in state level legislation and put in a penal code charge for it, not Dr. Nashville's. And again, that's just an example.
Yes, I see what you're saying. Say that. Okay, so I don't fully agree with the marijuana one, because there is no state legislation is not inherently federal legislation, right? If a federal government existed and they wanted federal drug laws, that could be a possibility. But in this sort of government structure we have, the DOJ has no say really on whether or not drugs are even illegal or not illegal.
Correct. I'm not saying they do.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is the solution would be to have some type of like highway traffic act that the DOJ implements, right?
Yeah, but they can't do that either.
That would outline all the charges for really.
Yeah, I mean, look at the SAG document. That's not within their purview.
I get that.
I do get what you're saying. I'm gonna give you an alternative, right?
Okay.
Is that what should have happened? And I think the concern. So, first off, there's been an inherent inconsistency to even by singular justices, where one day they're signing something, next day they have a problem with something's to this, another day. In other words, like there was no logic being used.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Today there was a lot of logic. But at least now we're agreeing that there's a disagreement on the logic being used. Right?
Sure.
And this is a case of, my interpretation of it was that both counties legally passed decriminalization of marijuana, and that what Dr. Naya, a separate legislative body, is introducing is perceivably in contradiction. And instead of it being denied, rather and closed, is that maybe that is a valid concern. And I actually see what they were pointing out is that instead of closing it, they should be like, hey, this legislation is in contradiction to these pieces of legislation. This needs to be resolved either A, by the mayors signing off on it or altering their legislation, or potentially Dr. Naya changing her legislation, or not Dr. Naya has to contest authority on our legislation and to put hers in.
Sure.
So
I'll be honest. I think you kind of cut me off, and rightfully so during that portion. But the example that you gave really summed up my point entirely. It's that the DOJ is shutting doors preemptively rather than letting stuff happen that they have the tools to resolve. That's kind of the point that I wanted to make, and I think you made it quite well with the example that you gave.
Yeah, I will say that I want to give them some. Well, I'd like to. So, but what's your thought on the overall meeting?
I thought it was good. I thought it was really good. I especially thought it was encouraging that they were willing to sit there and workshop something and actually come to a solution. This is in regards to the marijuana legislation. That again, it's one of those things that I think needs to happen at every step of the process, rather than just getting hit with a red light. No, there is an opportunity for arbitration and discussion and collaboration, and having people debate and have their mind change, or potentially not. I think that's the most encouraging part of that meeting, is that happened right in front of us, and we saw that it was a solution to a problem.
Yeah, agreed. Abilene?
So, I don't have a whole lot to say in an effort not to be redundant or apparent, but I definitely think it's a positive for having this meeting. The fact that considering a meeting like that weekly, that's amazing. I think the whole 2-week restriction thing, they're not really grasping the depth of how that was weaponized and used for really something other than maybe what it was apparently intended to. And it's kind of weaponized to, I don't know, filibuster things out of existence and that sort of thing. Because as far as our ability to rewrite and take care of stuff, we don't need 2 weeks for that. We've done it before in 24 hours, complete rewrites of stuff, 48 hours at most and stuff like that. Now, if it takes them 2 weeks to get around to reading something, adjusting something, I mean, that's kind of their problem. It should just be, you know, they have 2 weeks to look into it, and, you know, they can have a response within 48 hours, and then you can get this kind of stuff up without having to wait 2 weeks. It's almost like punishment.
Oh my God, that thing is so fast. I agree with that. Yep. Okay. Good point.
I touch on that. Maybe next time we have a meeting, we can kind of like rub them a little bit on that and be like, you know, can we break down what really is the purpose for this 2 weeks? And if it's just to give yourselves 2 weeks, why even call it 2 weeks? Just call it when you get to it. When you can. Because when this shit goes up, apparently people can react to it within hours and make all kinds of philosophies.
You see why
on it. And now
people think I'm a.
Anyway, that's that. I think we should rub them again on that. Another meeting. As far as all this other marijuana stuff that was going on in these meetings, I feel like that was progress. I mean, some of you would know more about that particular legislation, the current one with the Dr. Nine, etc. But I think it's all a positive sign, to say the least. I do think it was.
People think I'm the one that bites next.
Disappearing, and now all of a sudden he's back, and now he's at the meeting. Was he really the most qualified person to be leading that on behalf of the justices, being that he's like, I don't know what's going on with any of this, et cetera, or is that kind of perspective what we want. But it seemed like, regardless of that, he
Oh my
would,
God.
he was siding with the justice's point of view throughout the whole thing. And then
Yeah.
everything Michael mentioned, I agree with and support everything Michael just said, basically.
Yeah. Okay. Archie. I'm going to respond to everybody, by the way. I'm reserving. I'm trying not to imprint my opinions before hearing yours. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
I will also, again, echo, it's just nice to have somebody who we can actually talk with and will listen.
Yeah.
Even if, like, we don't get everything we would want out of it, the fact that there's going to be some compromise and movement forward is encouraging. It does, however, also really heavily center, in my point of view, where the actual problem was, or who the actual problem was in the process.
Could you speak up, by Archie?
I'm sorry, I'm
you're
talking a
good.
little bit quieter. But yeah, it's gonna be a thing.
Who the issue? Well, I missed that last sentence.
I'm saying this meeting really centered, in my point of view, what or I guess who really is the issue in this entire process. To speak bluntly, it seems to me that they have been heavily deferring to Angel in almost everything. We saw in this meeting, they kept saying that they're going to have to talk to her over and over again.
Yeah.
And it makes me just believe that she is the primary issue in a lot of this. I hate to just say that bluntly like that, but it's just the case. Moving on from that, however, I'm just happy that they're actually wanting to talk to us and try to get some things moving, and I am happy to try to work with them to get things on paper. We'll just have to see how it goes from here.
Okay. Maeve?
I had a few notes about the discussion. Overall, I'm very glad that it occurred. I think it was a positive step that we were able to have that meeting, and they definitely seemed willing to have that conversation and work with us. I think weekly meetings are a good start as well. That was really, I guess, heartening to hear. And I also really appreciated that Hollow said that he would like to cut down on the whole red tape and unnecessary complicated legislation aspect of government. So it seems like they're kind of on board with transparency and accessibility, which are things that I like to champion, I guess. So that was nice for me to hear. I will say, compounding off of what Archie just said, Hollow did actually make a distinction at one point where he was like, yeah, I think everyone in the room here agrees. And is willing to work on that, and like it was a very weird distinction that was like he kind of like backtracked a bit, and it kind of implied that he thought Angel might not agree with it or be willing to work on things. So I think that that's something to kind of keep an eye on. As far as like actual legislation or policy, I did update the things that were discussed in the meeting on our Trello. So noting the vendor permit with the big PP Act, what Hart said about PIPA, etc., should all have comments and updates and be moved around accordingly.
Yeah.
In regards to the waiting period after legislation has been denied because of constitutionality or whatever, it might be worth visiting whether that 2 to 3 day period of discussion that we kind of discussed can be included in that 7 to 14 day period. So that it's not a new counter starting over, but rather like starts
Agreed.
then.
Yeah.
Just to help save on time there a bit as well.
Yeah.
I think moving it to 7 days as well instead of 14 would probably be for the best. And the only other thing that I really had an issue with was they said that they had conferred with the state about, audits being made to legislation and what would happen with the legislation that they had written. And that the state said, well, since, no contests were made, if they want to change anything, it's going to have to be audited and whatever, and everything still stands. I don't know how the state expected us to contest things if we didn't know and weren't notified that changes weren't being made and amendments weren't clearly happening and, like, publicized. So I think that's something that's worth exploring in future discussions. Or maybe bring the state in. Because how are we supposed to contest if they're not following procedures on amending legislation and we don't know what's happening?
I'm gonna shoe in on that a little bit. And that's why I kind of prodded, because the verbiage being used was very specific. So transparently, I have not communicated with Governor Oil or anything like that, like, extensively. And that's very intentional. I think him and I based on our short conversation, I believe, I'm obviously not trying to speak too much heavily for him, I think both want to discuss here in Los Santos things, right? And that has been the case from the very start. And so when the mention of we were heavily implied, does not tell me a yes or no, right? It also opens up, was there misinterpretation? I didn't want to prod too heavily because at the end of the day, we were saying, hey, a bunch of illegal legislation was passed. Grossly illegal, because there was things that was edited, right? That's one thing, right? But then there was what happened in the 2 weeks prior to our audit, which was fuck you, Nino, fuck you, Pred, fuck, like, we run the city, and like now marshals can hire and fire, now you can't do FOIA, and it was so dramatic that we're saying reverse that shit. You shouldn't even need to audit it, right? And especially when the document effectively states that y'all have been acting inappropriately, right?
Yeah, we should be reverting or throwing all of them out until an actual review has happened, in my opinion, as well. Yes.
Right. Now, I do believe that there may have been some levels of confusion over our contention with the edits versus the entirety of the legislation, right? Like the FOIA paragraph that was added, right? We're in contest with. Not what was originally there, right? Or the addition of the paragraph with the marshals that said, we run everything. We're saying throw that out, right? But I recognized in that meeting, because I tried, this is a problem that I have, and I know this can annoy people, but I try to maybe overly psychoanalyze the person I'm speaking with. And my reading was that Hollow is picking up a lot of pieces that probably were left unattended to. And he is slowly getting up to speed himself. Clearly he's read enough to have done due diligence, but he's probably dealing with a mountain of information. So he's still in the middle of processing it, hence the reactions to, wait, which legislation? This legislation? Like, you know what I mean?
FOIA, yeah.
So he's juggling this 3-month, like, season and trying to figure it all out, right? And Hart is painting her reality of what's transpired. Where I'm going with all this is, we're going to have a meeting with the governor anyways, right? I'm assuming it's, I don't even know if it's the governor or other state officials. Transparently, I don't know who's showing up at it. But I think that is a place where we can have that conversation, and they may not fully understand why we're recommending the revert. That we're not saying fuck all your shit. We're saying, hey guys, for all of our sanity, it actually makes sense to just revert 2 weeks worth of bullshit and then reintroduce it. And that's a more kosher avenue. And if the state disagrees, then they disagree. You know what I mean? So
there should be a formal amendment process, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I mean, even I think it was Hollow maybe yesterday at the court cases was saying like, God, it would be really nice if we could see like the old version of this compared to the new one and have like a change log. And it was like, no shit, like it would be nice to be able to see like, you know, this legislation was amended on the 24th of November and now includes blah blah blah, or you know, have a reference back to
did
old
they
piece.
say that? Because that exists already.
Yeah.
One of the judges said it. I think it was Hollow, but I don't know who it was.
I think that's why I held back, right? And I'm sure, I'm glad you guys aren't holding back in this, right? And there's a lot, like, there was a statement made that, well, we were led to believe that we could do all these things. I know that's not true because Bailey sat here and told me otherwise. He sat here and told us that he was in all that shit, and that grace period was for the original pieces of legislation that were put up. to get it in place, and then everyone was supposed to follow the process. Now, I could have called them out on it and said, hey, that's bullshit, but I didn't because I didn't think it was productive, and I think that it's worth giving them the benefit of the doubt because there is an idea of an echo chamber, right? When you have one person at the helm saying, this is what was said, these poor people might have been gaslit for the last 3 months. You know what I'm saying? I know that is that fucked up to say?
Well,
No,
they
that's
didn't
what I
say who led them to believe that either. Like for all we know, you could interpret it as the state government led them to believe that. Angel led them to believe that. Like who
They could have
knows?
collectively thought something and went down the wrong path, right? There's a bunch of different things. So, like, it's kind of like, look, they're here in good faith. We're having a constructive conversation. If they believed aliens existed before, let them, who cares? You know what I mean? Like, that's sort of the approach I took with it. And I'm kind of saying I would much rather this than what we previously had in terms of conversations.
Yeah.
And if there's things that we can hold back on, or if there are things, a way that we can approach these conversations in a healthy fashion, even to our detriment to a degree, that's the plane we have to be on right now, for everyone's benefits, every legislative body. So
Yeah, we've got to be willing to compromise where we have to on things. I definitely agree.
absolutely. Now, I want to address Abilene's point, because I agree with you that I also sort of got this notion of, we're on an ivory tower. I got shit to do. We need a million days. I do think that the government in general needs probably 2 very active justices. As much as I love Bailey, he also wasn't very active, right? And active doesn't mean that you're an email away. I mean, you're in the city, right? Just as much as PD needs an active chief of police or a sheriff, et cetera, it needs active mayors. Because if they're not there, you're not there. And most people are going to hesitate from an email away. I also do recognize the reality that, and probably a big part of why I had for a long time been the one stopping us from impeaching Angel probably half a dozen times, because I'm like, who else can replace, right? What I am hoping is after we achieve these things and come to some level of common understanding, that maybe, and hopefully with these new minds at the table, there may be a level of self-realization that comes out of this, right? Where we say, hey, why can't you do this, right? You get what I'm saying? Like we have to steady our swing.
Yeah, it's to put it bluntly again, it's massage their egos to some extent, allow them an opportunity to save face, will allow them the opportunity to step in line without having to get too embarrassed or, other issues.
Yeah, right. Like, because as far as they may have been aware before they took the job, maybe their job requisite only required them being around for 5 hours a week. We don't know. Right? We believe that they need to be. They may not realize our expectation. You know what I mean? It's kind of like we need, anyways. I thought generally that was, Dr. Naya told me exactly what you said, Archibald. I know you said you hate to say it out loud. It's what I was thinking. It's what she was thinking. I think it's what a lot of people are thinking. The reality of the matter is we need people willing to come to the table and compromise, but recognize who owns what, right? It's the very reason I didn't want the PD there, because I'm sorry, but they work for me and Pred, I'm not inviting them. You can't invite them on my behalf, right? And there are going to be those little distinction lines that we need to die on, because unless we're willing to, throw democracy away, right? Like, But what else do you guys want to? I'm going to leave the floor open a bit. Or if you have questions for me, what my thoughts were, or why I reacted a certain way or responded a certain way, anything, want to
think I'll only add that it was subject matter along the lines of just that, right? That the PD are in yours and Fred's purview. Where the lines in the sand are. I bit my tongue quite a bit because my read of the room is, yeah, I think it was largely the same as yours, that those lines will be drawn whenever the conversation with state officials happens. And that was a far better forum to tackle those types of issues. Beyond that, I mean, I agree with everything that's been said in the circle. Honestly, I think it was progress. I think having people willing to come to the table, even Hallow making the statement that, you know, I'll change my mind. That's the kind of stuff that I want to hear. I want to hear people willing to debate in good faith.
Gonna
That
be
felt
real.
collaborative and not combative to me, and I appreciated that.
Yeah, the Hollow's abuse joke actually hit a little bit too close to home, so.
Oh, about how we were like scared
How
children
we're
asking.
acting, yeah.
I think the only hurdle I want to see overcome is that default setting of being proactive on the DOJ's part. I want to see them react. And I know that's usually counterintuitive, right? It's always better to be proactive than reactive. Except I think that their proactivity is closing doors. I would be remiss if I didn't circle back to the example that you gave, Nino. They need to be more cognizant of what they're doing and the doors that they're closing, and more open to conversation, collaboration, more open to, you know, some dumb fuck mayor spending $50 million in stockpiling weapons and then having to deal with it. I want to see more of that.
I think that goes back to why the past justices didn't need to be as hands-on as the current justices need to be, but they may not have yet realized the reasons as to why, and we need to show them it. And I think through these conversations that we have been having, I think they'll slowly come to realize that themselves. And I think Grayson, for example, in the short period of time she's been interfacing between both parties, I think she herself is starting to learn these things. Take, for example, and that's a good thing, right? Because she can then play an advocacy to this experience, right? They're now experiencing this.
I just go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say that's why, rather than saying something like it's none of your business or it's not in your purview or you know, something along those lines, I bit my tongue and I tried to give the example that they had the tools they need to resolve
and she
those issues without it being codified into county legislation. And that was my effort to help them realize they already have everything they need to deal with all these situations they're trying to prevent from happening.
I think it comes back to a reality of like experience, right? And this is not to downplay how much time they've been justices or what they've dealt with, but these are new experiences for everybody, right? How does the system actually look like? What's actually happening, and what are the challenges? If someone was masking those challenges from them for a while, this can be a new, like,
shock.
A shock.
Well, it's the same,
exactly.
It's the same challenges I was facing 4 months ago. I mean, think of every hole that I was trying to plug with my legislation, and then compare it to something written recently.
Yes.
I think you're right. I think you're right. It very much is a matter of going through the motions, getting the reps in, and then they'll realize. So
Well, and that's the thing, right? It's like all of our roles, you know, mayor's office, DOJ, PD, whatever, like we are ultimately public servants. Some of us are elected, some of us are appointed, some of us are hired, but we are public servants. And if you're not putting in the legwork to keep in touch with the public that you are serving and apprise of the events that are affecting them and the surrounding organizations that you work alongside and how, like, then you're not doing your job. there's a reason, like, I'm out here every day, you know, like, trying to talk to people and doing silly toe experiments and stuff, because, like, that's our job, and it's part of their job too, albeit in a slightly different format.
Yeah.
So that brought up a very odd bit of the conversation I wasn't expecting, but did any of y'all overhear the conversation when I brought up the Marshall thing? Justices don't see Marshall reports.
Yeah, that feels weird.
It's not only it feels weird, I don't see how that's constitutional.
Yeah, because they're supposed to be headed by the justices.
Right. And I didn't want to dive into it too deeply because by constitution, those three justices are the DOJ. They're the head of it. Just because one of them is in charge of the law enforcement agency doesn't mean that that law enforcement agency doesn't operate under them. And for them not to have purview over that doesn't make any sense. I genuinely believe that something got cooked. I'm gonna go on a limb here. I think Hart in general was probably saying what she heard Angel say. Hollow was absent, and because he came back. Wait, what do you mean by that?
Just wasn't around for a lot of things. That's all.
Okay, all right. I because you were spitting fire earlier. I wasn't sure.
Yeah, no,
if you
sorry,
meant
I
more.
wasn't going any deeper on that one. No, sorry.
Okay, that him, yes, being absent and coming back, he's coming with a less rosy tinted eyes, like glasses or whatever. No, the marshals, you should not be. Why would you not have access to their reports? If you don't have access to their reports, you literally cannot oversee anything that they produce inherently.
That's like the chief of police not having access to PD reports.
Exactly. If the marshals were what I think Hart believes they should be, or is led to believe they are meant to be, then the marshals would be acting at a federal level.
Yeah.
Not as a sub-entity of the DOJ.
Could I pose a question? And this question comes from my own ignorance of that entire framework. But given how the marshals are deployed, how they're used in the current system, and I'm not saying it's the right way.
Yeah,
but how they're used.
Yeah, exactly.
With all the justices
That's
having
what I was
access
pointing
to
at.
the reports, potentially conflict them from overseeing litigation.
I don't know. Well, yes,
Oh,
I
that's
mean,
a good
in
point,
theory,
yeah.
that's what I was posing. I was shocked to hear the judges didn't have marshal reports. I think Arcadia told me the justices didn't either, but like when it's so ridiculous, like I must have misheard it. Like, you know what? That's what it got confirmed that justices can't even see it, and it's like, well, they might be investigating us. I'm like, that shouldn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, what? Like, I'm confused by that general notion because it draws into question every single thing that a marshal has ever brought to court.
Yeah.
Like, because if you as a judge or justice oversee a court case presented by a marshal, inherently you may not be able to conclude. You will not be able to conclude whether or not there's exculpatory evidence.
Yeah.
If the marshals are supposed to be looking at the justices as well, then they shouldn't even be under our DOJ's purview. They should be state level, higher up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, like say someone a marshal has a case against somebody, a judge oversees it, a justice is, I don't know. It's so cooked that there's no way in a million years I am gonna believe that was in it. Just as much as it didn't make any sense how like like FOIA was just magically changed and Angel had the audacity to say she did it because of me. Like to say that so bluntly, like, you know, like, what are you going to do about it, was absurd. I think this is the same level of absurdity I have, is that it doesn't make any sense.
Well, I mean, I think it all begs the question: does the judge appointed with justice appointed with oversight over the marshals have access to those reports? And I would hazard a guess that the answer to that question is probably yes. But that's my underlying point, is that I have no issues with the justices not having access to the reports if the marshals are there for oversight and the justices are there to oversee the marshals. But that's not how that system works.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
honestly, the more we sit here and talk about it, it just makes me feel like the fucking. I'm gonna say something maybe a bit controversial here. It makes the marshals feel like the SS. Okay.
Yeah. I was thinking more like KGB. Like, I don't know if you know the story of
fair.
how
Yeah.
Putin came to power, but like, you know, it started with like,
That is
you know,
more apt. I agree.
yeah, it's like, you know, they kind of were there as like private security and then slowly turned into this, and now all of a sudden, like, you know, you could be the president and the fucking KGB's kicking the fucking door in.
Yeah.
Oh my god. I think that's going to be the value of a lot of these conversations, is I think there may be a lot of assumptions and a lot of unwritten bullshit that may have made its way into, let's say, the culture of government. And I say culture because it's not written down. It's like things that are assumed to be meant to be a certain way when they were never meant to be. And
Well, that's the thing, is that government shouldn't operate on assumptions. Government operates on law. By nature, it is all written down. It is all legislated, codified. Like,
yeah,
if we're having our government operate on an assumption, then we need to actually codify that assumption and make it law, or we need to say, no, this is not true, and strike it down. Or adapt it. Like, we can't just have people operating on a basic understanding of something without actually having something to back it up.
Yep, agreed. You know what's so crazy about that? It even, like, these FOIAs, right? With the marshals saying no, and then you have to go to a judge to then audit it, but they're auditing something that they can't have access to know whether or not, bro, the entire thing, it's like, it really is fucking crazy. Wait, like, I'm not a big fan of using the reference you mentioned, Archie, but I get where you're coming from. It does feel like some secret police shit. Like, what the fuck? Like, like if you find out like Trump or Biden has like some special police force that nobody knows about, and they have the absolute authority to arrest, but the authority that is meant to, like, you know, conduct jurisprudence on does not have access to those. It's insane. It's fucking.
But it's even
it's
worse
fucking
than that, because
Guantanamo
it's not just a secret
type
police
shit.
force with Guantanamo.
Yeah.
The secret police force is also able to change our legislation. It's able to rip apart departments like LSPD. Like, it's literally.
How would you be a part of it and
everything.
not be like, this is inherently corrupt by definition?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I went for an extreme example there, you know, hyperbolic to prove a point, but I'm gonna stand by it.
Yeah. Oh, I totally get it. I do. Oh my fuck. Yeah, that shit shocked me. I was just, I genuinely was dumbfounded.
Yeah.
Maybe it's, I don't know. Maybe I grew up as a history. I don't know what it is, but I mean, I feel like this is like a shared belief here. Like, hearing that and being like, it's more than an eyebrow raise. It's more of like a what the fuck? Like,
Yeah.
Part of me wonders too, like, because obviously, you know, you have Angel at the top and you have varying, you know, marshals in the actual, you know, marshal's office, and I wonder how many of them like see this, if any, and to what degree. And like, if any of them have tried to speak up, if any of them have tried to disagree, and what has happened.
I think that here's what I think happened. I dealt the first 3 months I was in office. Michael, Archie, Abilene can attest to this. Is we had to fight a narrative that we're trying to become dictators. I don't believe a singular action we made was ever transparent, written, etc., etc. And we had been saying for a minute that this just seems like extreme projection, because like, where is this stuff even coming from? And I feel like, you know, the facts have been just like right in front of us the entire time. Is that one justice was trying to take everything and finding a way to, you know, sit at the top of the Crystal Palace. And when we started pointing at it, that projection became the defense. So,
It's a very crazy situation. I really like. I'm kind of just speechless by the whole thing.
Yeah.
When was the last time you saw Marshall around, Maeve?
Yesterday for Fred's hearing.
And then before that?
I don't.
Been a hot minute?
I think there was one in briefing yesterday or today, but other than that, yeah, it's been a hot minute.
Yeah, they used to show up, you know, 2 or 3 of them each at a PD meeting. And I think the answer to your question is, where are they now?
Yeah.
They're not around, right?
Well, I mean,
their authority got called into question, and when, you know, they didn't get to play God, it just wasn't as desirable.
I think I've heard that Dark has been around. It's just not at times that I'm normally awake. But
yeah.
And to be honest, I don't know many of the Marshals very well, but I know Dark a bit, and I would think out of anyone, he would have a problem with how the Marshals are operating. So I'm really interested and or confused as to what his stance is on everything.
I've spoken to Doc in the past about this very subject, and I actually think Doc is a good one. I think he faces a similar characteristic held by the majority of law enforcement, is that when their sense of reality is challenged, it's almost like the badge gives you a sense of not even a sense of authority, but like a sense of like, this institute is by existence inherently just, right?
Mm-hmm.
They circle the wagons instead of asking questions.
Yes. And so when I started pointing at like, hey, the fabric that you are functioning with, here are some issues, he very quickly would turn it into, what are you asking for? What is your angle? Why are you telling me, like, you know what I mean? Why are you looking in my house? And I think that was, Dark is blinded by the establishment he's a part of. And I think for him to give an opinion on it, he would have to understand what it is. Like, it'd have to be in his face. Like, look, this is actually happening. I'll give you an example. The leak of the Hydra raid. Obviously, there's some things I've been mentioned, but those leaks came from LSPD and the Marshals. 1,000 fucking %. And
I mean, I'm not surprised to hear that.
When it was noted to him, and not directly in that depth, but even the notion that it might be happening, his first reaction was to question how I knew about the raid, while it had been plastered all over Twitter a couple hours after. So we got into a match of like, how do you know? Like, what are you doing wrong, Nino? Rather than like listening to me as the mayor reporting a potential crime to the person I'm supposed to be reporting it to, you know? I don't know. It's how well do you know him? No, Doc, Maeve.
He was my shift lead when I was a dispatcher, and there was a time where Forte was kind of loosely affiliated with his family. Not
I
anymore,
think you
but
should chat with him, to be honest. I think for his own benefit.
I know he liked me a lot, and he was impressed with my work. We got along very well, but Dark sees the world very black and white. Things are good and things are bad, and there's very little, if any, gray in between. But devil's advocate, I think there is a possibility that there are marshals within the marshal's office that are decent and not inherently trying to be like corrupt or evil or whatever, right?
I agree.
But I think it can kind of function in the lines of like an abusive relationship, right? Where you're there and you say, well, my partner's really good. He would never hurt me. He loves me. He wants the best for me. And your friends are saying, no, honey, he's not treating you well. Like, you need to leave. Like, look at this thing he did. And you say, well, oh, I have an excuse for that. And your partner says, no, I would never hurt you. And you make all these excuses and you get gaslit into thinking you're doing the right thing and that things are fine.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually you start seeing things, and you start.
Of course, she shows up.
That maybe what he's doing right now isn't nice. Maybe I shouldn't be accepting this. And there are little things that call things into question. And I think there's a possibility that some of them may be starting that process. I think especially with things like the Pred case. I think could possibly be things that could potentially raise brows among the marshals that are more inclined to see the errors of their ways. And maybe none of them are having that moment, but I think that it's a possibility, right?
No, I agree with you. I mean, law enforcement in San Andreas is more gang-like than it's ever been. Transparently, and this is kind of scary, and I know this is a trusted circle, I have LSPD officers saying that they will kill for me if the marshals piss me off. Now, now would they actually do that? Probably, hopefully not. But I say this because no, I don't want you saying this. I don't want you thinking this. But it makes me wonder, like, how many are gonna kill for? You know what I'm saying? Is like that's a very gang. To even bring it up is a very gang thought process. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's one thing to say that as a joke among trusted friends. It's another thing to say that directly to the mayor, who technically should probably be reporting you.
For free, it took me 8 months.
What they need to be saying is, I'll charge someone with treason for you if you think they can get it.
No, they're like, yo, you let me know, I'm gonna fucking take Angel out for you. Don't worry. I think it's mostly it's jokes, right? But when you look at when the PD is operating among themselves, how they function, you know what I mean? You've seen it. You've been in some of the LSPD, like, hey, remember the other day I had to yell at Carmine or whoever it was? Because he's just like, they're all a bunch of fucking gangbangers, right? They come at us, we're going to take them out. And it's just like, listen, like, you know, there's one thing to say it, it's another thing to act it, right? It's you can't go against your gang leader, right? That's like an inherent no-no. I mean, motherfucking Den was going around talking about, like, people snitching. Like, Den, you're a cop. What do you mean they're snitching? Like,
somebody is running back behind you there.
Yep.
Just came from that way, went this way, just in case anybody's worried about that.
As far as I know, like, you know, not that I'm omniscient, but
hey,
I don't think that they're.
Hey, my bad. I was looking for my friend.
No, you're good. She's over there by the tennis court. Hey, let me ask you something.
Oh my God, Tilly.
Oh, he's too far away.
I fucking knew it. I fucking called that.
Wait, what happened? Oh.
The second Tilly ran, I said
Tilly,
she's gonna stab him.
Don't run with a knife. That's unsafe for you. Same way they don't tell you not to run with scissors.
Yep.
All right, I got a
over that way.
flight to catch. I got to be at an airport in 45 minutes, so I'm gonna
right.
be back on Tuesday.
Okay,
Is there anything else
easy.
anyone needs from me?
No, I don't think so. I'm gonna. I know the city hall stuff was. Pick that. I'm gonna take a poke at it. I think there were simple requests.
Yeah, the court center one. But I think the way to do that is amending the Big PP Act.
Yeah, we can. Yeah, we could.
That's what Hollow
Do that.
recommended.
Yeah. And then what was the other one?
I'll have to take a look. Easy,
The
easy
marijuana
shit.
amount stuffs, but yeah.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah,
probably
and
do it
then-
like tomorrow morning type shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I said
Yeah.
Pippa was fine, so I just moved that over to completed. But,
I can't believe that's not partial legislation. I can't believe that's the entirety of the PIPA Act, but okay.
I think it goes back to I think this city would very much benefit from like 2 very active justices. I hope Hollow is seemingly maybe becoming one. Back in the day, you didn't need justices as often. Now they're a big part of the government moving forward.
Yeah.
But then again, maybe it's not. It's only a consequence of the over encroaching that took place. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't know. I don't want to speak for him, but I feel like that's what Hollow wants. Like, yo, look at this legislation. I got you. Here's the feedback. Boom, boom, done and done. Right? You only call them when you really, really need them. And the only reason we really, really need them is because of the shit show that's been created the last 2 months. You know?
Yeah.
Outside of their purview. Were they partially responsible? Maybe. But just as much as, it's understandable for them to have trust in their peers, right? To a degree.
Yeah.
So, anyways. All right. Well,
I'm going to run.
yeah.
If anyone needs me, shoot me an email. Otherwise, I will catch you all on
Easy.
Tuesday.
Yeah,
All right,
I'm
brother.
gonna keep working on the charges stuff. I will be away Wednesday and Thursday cooking for the family for Thanksgiving. So.
Oh yeah. Oh shit, Maeve, can
Yeah.
you give these to Jack for me?
Yeah.
I'm gonna run too, but I
Perfect.
will be around daily for the meetings at the very least.
Hell yeah.
All right, guys. Take
All
care.
right.
Good seeing you.
Y'all
Bye.
stay
Bye.
safe, yeah?
I need to know, maybe.
Have a good one.
All right.